You need to share the screen and go to the...
Yeah, I will. I'll do the intro about what we're going to talk about, and then I'll share. Okay.
Hey, we are recording now, and you can start. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Nice to see so many faces, some from the multi-hull we don't know, and a few of our friends, and definitely all of the Cuba crew is here. So super excited to see Heidi and Kirk and Val and Kelly, and we'll do some introductions later. I'm Teresa Sicade. This is my husband, Rob. And we've got a full agenda. So what I'm going to do is just walk you through real quick what we're going to talk about tonight. And then I'm going to take over the screen and do a presentation. We've got 2 PowerPoints, one of our trip to Cuba, and then one super cool one that Rob's going to go through after of all the cars and the really cool cars. So I'll do an intro, and then Rob will talk about some logistics. Rob will talk about Old Havana. I'll talk about the actual sailing part of the trip because we did go sailing. We rented a catamaran for 6 crazy days and went out sailing in Cuba. Rob will talk about a road trip we did after sailing. We had a guide the whole time except for the sailing trip. We had a guide, and she got us a bus, and so we toured around together. We had some pretty fun times on a road trip. And then we took a trip up into Vinales, into the agricultural section, the tobacco growing country, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And then Heidi's going to come in and give us lots of the better details, and I'll share Heidi's website with us. She did 4 blog write-ups on her blog that are just really nice details of this whole trip and some beautiful pictures. So we'll let Heidi talk a little bit about Vinales, and then Rob will talk a little bit about New Havana. We'll have a short Q&A just for anybody who wants to bail out and has a quick question before we talk about cars. And then we'll let Rob talk about the cars, and then we'll have any more Q&A that we want. So I'm going to take over and share the screen, and let's see, hopefully this will work. And there we go. Dan, if you got positive view here on our PowerPoint?
Yes, I see your screen.
Okay, very good.
And before, I don't think you're going to mention this, but it's called What We Did on Our Summer Vacation because this started as a presentation at PSCC. It was a 10-minute, literally they asked everyone to talk about what they did during the summer. So that's, and we've just always kept that title. So that's why it's titled What We Did on Our Summer Vacation.
Yeah, it really wasn't a summer vacation. It was in April that we went. It was April of 2019. It was, the timing was pretty good because it was right before the problems in Venezuela and right before our soon-to-be former administration sort of slammed the door shut on travel. So we kind of luckily just snuck in right at the right time and had our 2-week trip there. So let's see, the mouse is kind of weird. This isn't actually a PowerPoint, this is a PDF. So the mouse doesn't, I don't have a pointer like I wish I would have with a PD or with a PowerPoint. But we started and of course landed in Havana and spent a few days in Old Havana, and then we got on a bus. We went on this trip with 2 other boats, and I'll talk about those guys in a little bit, but we all rode the bus together down to the town of Cienfuegos, and we got on our boats there, and then we sailed out here 70 miles offshore to this little reef area off here. And then sailed back and got into a small bus. Just the 6 of us went down to this little town of Trinidad down here, visited this town, drove back up to Havana, dropped our stuff off at another Airbnb, went out to the tobacco country, like I said, to Vinales, and then back into Havana. So that's the trip. It was 2 weeks. It was jam-packed. There's so much to see in Cuba. We could just spend years there, not just weeks, but we really shoved in as much as we could in 2 quick weeks. So from here, we'll let Rob talk about the logistics.
So we had 3 boats, mostly from, well, it was organized by a woman in Paul's boat. So there was 3 boats. Our boat was myself and Teresa, Kirk and Heidi, Val and Kelly. So it was a good range of experience and interests on our boat. And because we connected with a guide that Heidi knew of, we pretty much stayed together for most of the 2 weeks. So all of the travels, we just used one guide. We all chipped in, and then also for the van that was our taxi taking us around.
I just want to make a comment. So we had my friend Val from California and my friend Kelly, who's way more than a farm girl, but she just wasn't a sailor quite yet. So she and I worked together at the county.
So traveling to Cuba presented some challenges. There's one of, at the time you had to go, you had to fit a certain category. You could be on a religious mission, you could be on, I mean, there's just a whole bunch of them. We were going in under the category of support for the Cuban people, which meant we stayed at private B&Bs. We ate at private restaurants. We avoided big hotels and large restaurants because they're all owned by the Army and the money goes to the government. So we were trying to do what we could to actually make sure our money went to the Cuban people while we were there. So it required us to keep a diary, and according to the US government, we have to keep that for so many years after we're back. They could ask for it. Incidentally, when we came back into the country, nobody cared. but
So
that's certainly, since we were there, the Trump administration has actually changed it a little bit. We were avoiding government-owned hotels and restaurants. Now you're prohibited from using them, which really puts you into a class of the B&Bs there, Casa Particulares, I think they were referred to. They're pretty rudimentary. You're really staying in with local people. They'll set up extra rooms. It's income for them. You know, so it was okay with, we did fine with it. You know, it wasn't the Hilton by any stretch, but it was certainly fun. We saw more of the, you know, got to talk to the people more, saw more of the towns, and it was a really nice way to travel.
Very much the Cuban experience and not the first class tourist.
Yeah, and I think the Trump administration also did something that affected cruise ships.
Right. After
which is really kind of unfortunate because a large part of their economy was queuing up for the cruise ship passengers and taking them around to places. So that was kind of the logistics. The actual boat logistics, Teresa will talk about that when we talk about sailing, because the whole food thing and the way the boat was set up, that's just a whole different story. So we'll cover that in a little while. So first place we went was Old Havana. And this is the traditional part of the old town. It's pretty rudimentary. The buildings aren't in great repair. It's a surprising mix of new and old. And it's really just kind of a fun part of town. Yeah, why don't you move us to the next one? So this is Kelly's on the left, Heidi and Teresa have their backs to me, Val's on the right, and Belle, our guide, is in the middle facing the camera. And I think Kirk was off taking pictures somewhere because that's usually where Kirk was when we were looking for Kirk. Belle was a English professor at the university, and Cuban people have a tendency to have an official job and then they try to get something in tourism that brings in real cash to them. There was at the time two currencies, the convertible pesos that we used and then the pesos that the Cuban people. I see that the Cuban government is trying to get rid of the Cuban pesos and move everybody over to convertibles. And I can't help but think that that's not going to benefit the local people because their pesos bought them stuff a lot cheaper than the convertible pesos that we used.
It was about 10 to 1. Was that
like that, yeah.
Exchange?
Yeah. So where we're standing here, we're on Mercaderes Street, and this is a mosaic mural done by an artist named Andre Carrillo, and it has 67 figures from Cuban history and or arts. And it's truly a mosaic. He had 4 colors to work with, which he mixed into 13 shades and did the whole mural. It's about 2 stories tall. And I was kind of sad, actually, when I was looking through these, that we didn't put, I'm sure somewhere I have a picture of the size of it, but it's enormous. And it's just all these people looking at it. It's really interesting.
Yep.
So Old Town, one of the first things Bill told us was, don't walk on the sidewalk, walk down the middle of the street, because the building parts will fall on you. The buildings weren't in the greatest repair. So it was kind of a safety thing where we could stay out in the street unless you're going to get run over. And then one other thing I'll mention here, these 2 photos, when we put this, we got pictures from everybody that went, Kevin and Val and Kirk and Heidi, and then mine. And I've used a mix of those photos in this presentation, and I believe I have credited the photos properly. If anyone, and if any one of you guys thinks I missed something, do speak up. But these 2 pictures came from Kirk and Heidi. So there was a lot of private restaurants. A lot more private businesses being allowed right now. And it's kind of odd. A Cuban can open up a restaurant, but they have to open it up in a house. You can't, there's no commercial property available. They just can't go out and rent a space for a restaurant. So they have to take a house and convert it to a restaurant, and then they can have a restaurant. It works because so many of the families, they're multi-generational families living together, and they have multiple houses, or they can have multiple houses. So that allows them to open up restaurants. And those were the restaurants that we tried to cater to as much as possible. You know, and we could tell those because, one, they're small, they're house sized, and, you know, they weren't attached to hotels or anything. So if we saw something small and it didn't look like it was attached to a hotel, then we were pretty certain that we were eating at a restaurant that was, the money was at least going to the Cuban people more than the others. I won't go back one. One last thing, there was cats everywhere. I love cats. I couldn't avoid taking pictures of them. And of course, I found that they loved looking at their reflection in the mirror, in the lens. But there's tons of cats all over the place. So this is actually the street that our B&B was on. That's a dance club. I think we were walking back pretty late, well, late for us. We were tired. For the Cubans, it was early partying time. But there was a couple of dance clubs on the left. And again, you know, these are private enterprises that somebody's just started. So this is a level of business that wasn't allowed, you know, a few years ago. And if you can see the sign down at the bottom, it says Escuela de, it's a dance school, which is kind of cool. And our Casa Particular was just down the street from here. And it looked very much like some of those buildings you see beyond the lights there. You know, when we pulled up to it, there was a number on the building and it looked almost derelict until you go in, and it was a really nice space. And it was, you know, fairly nice to stay at. And when we stayed at the Casa Particulars, they would usually ask us if we wanted breakfast. And it was, how much were we paying for breakfast? Was it $5 a piece for breakfast, which to them was a lot of money.
And we got eggs. The locals didn't get eggs. They would take the homeowners would go take our $5 and run out and buy eggs for us.
Yep. Yeah, we actually ate better than the locals. Their rations didn't actually allow them a whole lot of eggs. I think it was probably, well, certainly less than an egg a day per person.
For
maybe
6
half
a month
of that.
or something.
Yeah. Okay, you can go on to the next one. So this is just some of the architecture, some of the buildings in Old Town. I'm not convinced that these trees are growing out of planters up there. I think they're growing out of the crumbling masonry. Certainly the one on the right is the one on the left. I think some of those trees are also, there was a lot of that. It was actually fascinating looking at the crumbling buildings. And it's just a matter of, you know, economics and where does the money go? There's only so much money there. So the people that were with us will realize that these pictures are a little bit out of sequence. We arranged things more by geography than we did time. Because this is actually a market that we visited just before we left, but it was in Old Havana. It was down by the water. We'd made a couple of attempts at visiting it, and it was closed. And Bill had talked about and told us what a great market this was. And so we finally got there. And the funny thing was, it's about as big as a football field, and it is jammed. But after you walk through it, you realize that all the stalls had the same stuff. You know, it was the same carvings, it was the same prints, it was the same everything. And you know, I kind of made the joke that I could have deduped it into 10 covered stalls and decreased the size of it immensely. But it was still interesting. It was another example of, you know, kind of free market people that actually able to make some money. This was also a very popular destination for the buses that were hauling the cruise ship people around. So this one is an interesting picture. This is in a Plaza Vieja. And the funny thing was, you know, with Belle, we would always be going somewhere. She'd be taking us to this museum or that museum, or, you know, a different part of town or a place for lunch. And we probably walked through this plaza 2 or 3 times before I actually stopped and paid attention to what I was walking past. And so once I realized what it was, I had to take some pictures. So it really is, it's a naked woman wearing stilettos, riding a rooster with a fork over her shoulder. The artist is Roberto Fabulo, and no one knows what this thing means. It could mean a lot of stuff. He never said. There's a lot of talk about it having sexual connotations and possibly a tribute to prostitution. I'll let you make the connection of what's going on there and all the different synonyms for things that you see. But it was just kind of an interesting, you know, it's been in Plaza Vieja for 7 years when we were there. And it's just their art. So the grand cars. So at the time of the revolution, we've all heard, you know, there's lots of old cars there. And when the revolution happened, all of the cars that were there stayed in the families they were in. I don't know how that happened. You would have thought the government would have taken them all, but they didn't. So the cars that were there stayed with those families. So what's happened is those cars, when they're restored and they run and they look good enough, then the government licenses them as a grand car. And they're used in the tourist industry. So it's one of the few places where the locals can participate and gain tourist dollars. All of the grand cars are licensed, and they have the little logo or the grand car thing on the door on both sides. So all of them do. They'll also have taxi signs. And these cars are passed down from generation to generation. So the drivers that we were driving were probably it was their grandfather who owned the car at the time of the revolution. And it's just the way the family gets money to live. Because everybody, you know, like I said before, everyone has an official job, and then, you know, if they can, they have a tourist job that brings in money. Go back one just real quick. So with the grand cars, I noticed kind of a split in the way they were used. The convertibles were used for hour-long tours. So you could go rent one of these, fill it up with your people, and they would drive you around Havana for an hour at either $40 or $50 an hour. And those seem to be mostly the convertibles. The hard tops actually operated as tourist taxis. So if you wanted a taxi, you get a hard top. And I mean, they'd still take you on a little cruise, but you know, if you're going to go on a cruise in nice weather, you might as well be in a convertible. And you know, the thing about the guys, I mean, I talked to a few of the drivers, and I talked to a few of them, you know, on car stands where these things were standing around waiting for tourists. And, you know, they were all quite proud of them. A lot of them had original motors in them. God knows how they kept these things going. The ingenuity has got to be amazing. You know, some of them, the motors have been replaced. But these guys are their own mechanics. You know, they do their own work on the car, they keep it up, and they keep the money flowing into the family. And quite often they're supporting a multi-generational family, you know, off the income on one of these cars. And kind of, you know, I realize that one of the sad kind of things about it is that you grow up knowing that's what you're going to do. You know, you're in Cuba. And there's not a lot of opportunities. You just can't go out and do anything you want. You can't just go start any business you want, you know? So you're in the family and you see your dad driving the red Chevy, you're going to be driving that red Chevy in a few years.
I mean, you can't go to school and be a doctor if they let you, but you still are going to only make $10 a month. So
yeah.
You know.
you still need this job for tourist money.
You still need the tourist money.
So anyway, so you know, it was kind of bittersweet, you know, talking to these guys. So we did a little tour. So there was, counting our guide, what, 7 of us?
Yeah.
So we split between 2 cars, and Kirk picked this Dodge. So there's Kirk and Heidi and Bill alongside of us at a light. And I think this is a 57 Dodge Coronet. Kirk, does that sound about right? You probably know more about it than I do.
56 Chevy.
No. I'm talking about the car you were riding in. This one.
It was a Canadian. Plymouth. It was a copy of a Plymouth 57 Plymouth, and a Canadian made it into a Dodge, Canada.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, because it looks all the world to me like a 57 Dodge Coronet.
Yeah. It's a manual transmission, 318 manual 3-speed manual transmission.
Yeah.
3 on the tree.
Cool. So this is, again, jumping a little bit ahead in our timeline, but when Kirk and Heidi left a couple days before the rest of us did, or the day before.
The day before.
And when they got ready to go to the airport, Bell arranged for a grand car to pick them up and take them to the airport, which is really kind of nice. So there was Kirk and Heidi heading off to the airport, but that's in the future.
All right, so now we're going to talk about sailing, but in between, I'm going to just pop into a little video for you guys, because one of the things that I was so excited about Havana and Cuba was just the music. And of course, the quality of my videos is not awesome, but there's just music everywhere. And we were in Old Town Havana one night and dropped into a restaurant, and these guys were just playing and dancing. And I got a few clips here and there. I was so in love with all the music. And so we'll just pop into some music once in a while. Hope you don't mind indulging me in that. So now we finished Old Havana, went in the bus down to Cienfuegos, and we're going to get on our boat. We knew when we were provisioning, we were working with a company who was German based, and they sent us a list a few months in advance and said, you must send us back this provision list like a month in advance so we can have all your provisions ready. So Rob and I are in Bainbridge, Kelly's out at Wilkeson, out near Mount Rainier, Val's in California, and Kirk and Heidi are in Mexico, and we have this 3-hour call. This is long before everybody's Zooming, and we have this 3-hour call, and we've all got our list of stuff, and we know that we're going 70 miles offshore, and we don't know what's out there. What we suspect is that there's nothing out there that we're going to be able to shop. So we really need to make sure the boat is provisioned. We don't know at this point how bad it is trying to provision in Cuba. So we go through the list. We have a list that we think they're really going to be able to supply from, which we found out that was pretty hit and miss. And we start this call and we start this planning, and we have this call, and we discover pretty fast that between 6 people, one or more of the four of us, well, 3 are gluten-free, 2 are dairy-free. And that's when we found out that the gluten-free recipes have to be made with dairy-free substitutes. 2 are vegetarians, but seafood is okay. 1 is a carnivore who absolutely will eat nothing from the sea. 3 are soy-free, 1 is bean-free, 1 is pineapple-free. And we have this list of food. We need to feed ourselves for 7 days.
You skip chocolate and rum free.
Right. Nobody, amazingly, was chocolate and rum free. So we managed to go through this list, and the 6 of us came up with a really good meal plan. We decided to bring a lot of stuff, which was really our saving grace. I felt kind of silly packing in Seattle and putting so much stuff in my suitcase that was food, but at the end of the day, it was really the best decision we made.
Well, and it was funny because when we were on the calls, I was saying, well, guys, you're talking about bringing enough food. You're going to be bringing suitcases. You're crazy. And everyone's like, yeah, we're bringing suitcases. And it was a good thing.
It was a really good
We
thing.
ate really good.
Yeah,
we needed all that food.
Yeah, I think Heidi lived on snack bars most of the trip, but she stayed healthy and stayed strong. So we get to Cienfuegos, and we get out of the bus, and we go down to the dock, and we go into the store, and there was nothing there. There was like barely nothing there. And just like all the other grocery stores in Cuba, there's 3 things on 12 shelves. And so now it's just like tear up the list, start over again. But at least we had a good idea of what it was we were trying to get. And we did get some of the things. So we got our little cart filled and did that. And then in the meantime, the charter company sends one of the locals he's a friend of somebody that works there, and he gets black market fruits and veggies. And so Kelly had spent some time living in Nicaragua, and her Spanish was our go-to. So Kelly did the great, awesome job of communicating about our fruits and veggies. And we sent him off into town, probably on his horse with a carriage or a cart or something, to get us some fruits and veggies to provision the boat with.
Yeah, so there was in the store on site, it wasn't like a moorings in the rest of the Caribbean where you get everything. They just charge you a lot for it. There was no fruits and vegetables. But one of the other things that we had asked for, we wanted flour, and we couldn't find it anywhere. And we asked them, and the store didn't have any. So we asked him if he could find us some flour, and he said he'd try, and he came back with no flour. So it kind of gives you a feel for how hard it was to get basic things there. The entire town of Cienfuegos had no flour. And it was just not available.
But although now I'm wondering, we are 50% gluten-free. Why were we looking for flour? That I'm not even sure about. Who was going to make something with flour?
I can tell you, but it was for pizzas, and then we ended up doing all the pizzas with gluten-free.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So this is actually what our provisions looked like from the fruits and veggies when they came back, and some of it was kind of okay, and most of it was pretty good. It took some cleaning and some scrubbing and stuff, but we ate pretty well out there. We didn't have any complaints, and we did really well with that. We're all pretty flexible.
And this was very much in line with our wanting to spend money with the Cuban people, because this guy went out to the local people and was buying stuff out of their gardens and farms. So the money at least did not go, because the marina we're in, it has to be owned by the government. So anything we bought through that store was government, but at least the stuff we knew came from locals.
Yeah, so some of the stuff that we had brought ourselves was little snack bars and chocolate and lentils and salami and peanut butter and all the spices and seasonings, which I'm really glad we did. We had them. So now we go down to the dock, and I know the boat. I've been working with the woman who organized this and the broker and all the pictures and all the stuff. And we get to the dock, and sure enough, there's our boat, and sure enough, there's the mast, and sure enough, there's the spreaders. And sure enough, there's nobody in the office to tell us why the mast is laying on the deck of our boat. So we go have lunch, and we come back, and he's there finally. And turns out the charter for that had been a bunch of drunk Russians who were sailing at night and ran into a snagged the buoy on the way out the
Yeah,
channel.
Channel marker.
Yeah, hit the channel marker.
The
took
channel
down the
markers,
mast.
there are steel posts
Yeah.
embedded in the bottom.
We'll
So
show
when
you. We
they
got a
hit-
picture of
When
the
they
channel
hit it,
marker.
it was pretty substantial, but they took the mast down.
Yeah, needless to say, the broker hated chartering to the
Oh,
Russians.
but he had a sense of humor about because he told us no drinking vodka.
Yeah.
We're gonna be out at night, no drinking vodka.
Yeah, no vodka on the boat. So it turns out they did have a sister to this, and this is the boat over here that we ended up taking. Is it back here? Yeah, and the truth is, these boats were so beat. They were so ratty, and these had been in, I don't know how long they'd been in charter, but they'd come out of being cruising boats and then gone into charter. And oh my gosh, our boat was named Carlos. So that will tell you something, because who names a boat after a boy? And certainly Carlos. And this boat was just, we just never talked bad about it while we were out the whole time. We talked nice about Carlos and just hoped Carlos would get us there. And we had our challenges.
But in their defense, I mean, they can't get parts. They can't just order parts, so, we had a winch handle that was clearly made in a machine shop. I mean, I think that again, with a lot of the farm stuff that we saw and a lot of the other stuff, I think it was just amazing that they were able to keep a business going.
Yeah.
We ended up with a boat that the chain didn't match the Gypsy and was a pain in the butt to anchor, and the halyards were hard to operate and stuff, but they were doing the best they could with what they had
were,
available.
and it got us out to the reef, and we had a great 6 days, and it got us back. So I'm going to show you now. I've got Navionics on here, so I'll show you guys where we were. So here is Cuba, and again, here's Havana, and here's Cienfuegos. So down here, so we took the bus down here, and in
Not seeing that, Teresa.
You have to stop when you're sharing, switching screens. You have to stop sharing and then reshare a different screen to come
Okay.
back.
Okay, gotcha.
You were sharing.
Okay, so let me share again.
Yeah.
Thanks. You got that one?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So here's Cuba, and Havana up here, and Cienfuegos is down here. And so here's the harbor. And then we sailed out of the harbor and out across the sea, staying out of this navigation prohibited zone, across the Caribbean and past this lighthouse. And out here, there's this string of barrier islands. And so that was our trip. We were 70 miles out from Cienfuegos, out to the first night we stayed out at this little island called Cayo Largo. So we left at about 5:30 in the morning. There were 3 boats. The other 2 boats chose to hire a Cuban skipper, and we did not, because 5 of the 6 of us had been offshore, done extensive offshore sailing. So we were comfortable taking a boat out of the sight of land and didn't really want to add to our crew. So what we did, though, we were smart enough to get up and follow the other boat in the dark, because this was a very busy little harbor. So we were up here and we followed the other boat in the dark all the way through this harbor and out this little channel. And then about daybreak, we got out here. And this whole area out here was just full of Cuban fishermen in these dinky, tiny little boats. I wish we had a picture of that somewhere. I'm sure Heidi's got some pictures of that somewhere. So that was the actual sailing trip and the route where we went. And then I'll just, since I have to share screen, I won't come back to this charts again. I'll just show you real quick. We stayed the first night here in Cayo Largo, and then we left and came back out of the reef and back out into the deep water. And the next day we traveled up here to this Canal de Rosario and came in this passage and stayed here for a couple of days, went up here and tried to do some snorkeling. But the winds were real high, and the snorkeling was really, when you go to snorkel, you really can't do it in big winds because it's too stirred up and too silty. So we spent 2 days here. And then when we brought the boat back to Cayo Largo, we went inside the reef, and we actually did this. We had to do it in daylight, and we motored inside the reef and all of these little bombies and all of these little shallows all the way back to Cayo Largo. So So that's the actual place that we
And-
were sailing.
And when we left Cienfuegos, the other two boats were ahead of us. They had Cuban skippers on them. And they had told us, well, follow us and we'll go in. And they were going to go do some lobster fishing, although they wouldn't say that out loud because it's illegal, but they were going to catch some lobsters. And we were supposed to follow them. But when they were quite a ways ahead of us and they were cutting the corner here, you see down here where the lighthouse is, they cut that corner, and we decided that at the time, I think we were about a mile behind them. We looked at the charts and it's like, there's no way that we're going to guess, you know, where they had gone a mile ahead of us going through there. So we played it safe and just went around, stayed in deep water and went around.
So we did come up onto the reef a little bit at the
a
edge.
little bit in 50 feet of water, but
Yeah.
we didn't.
Yeah, but we
cut through
didn't.
that stuff.
We didn't do that. That was where they went. So, okay, I'm going to stop my share again then and come back to file.
Did you share
Whoops.
this?
Nope. Share again. Let's see, share screen. Beep. So when I did the video for the song, did you guys not see the video of the dancers then? Okay, could you hear the music? You can hear it, okay.
We heard the
All right.
music. Yeah.
Okay, I might have to stop and share one of the videos of the dancers at Cayo Largo. So, okay, so this is the trip out, and this is Val sitting up on the bow in her happy place. It was kind of a delivery because we did have 70 miles to get under our keel that day, and we needed to get back up onto the reef and anchored before dark. So we did do some motoring, but we did have a little bit of nice sailing along the way. And I think this was as we were coming up onto the reef, and you're in that really deep water, and then it comes up really fast and it gets really shallow, and it's just strikingly blue and beautiful. And so this is where we anchored. This is Cayo Largo the first day, and this is what their channel markers look like. This is what snagged the shroud on the other boat and took the mast down. I'm pretty sure it was that one in particular. But you can see this is typical Caribbean, white, beautiful, stunningly gorgeous white sandy beaches, and you know, blue seas and warm waters and a little bit of chop, and it was all gorgeous. I think this is just a picture of us anchored at Cayo Largo the next morning. We did dinghy into town and then went back out and headed for the other anchorage. This is the marina at Cayo Largo. It turns out there is quite a bit of stuff out there. There's a big resort, but again, that's Army owned, so we can't go there. There was a small town out there of people who lived in, you know, the government housing supporting the resort, and they had a small grocery store, and they did have a turtle sanctuary that we went to that was kind of cool and fun to see, and a museum and a couple of little shops and a little restaurant at the resort. And there's, of course, you know, where there's Caribbean waters, there's commercial fishermen who'll take you out sport fishing. So there was those sort of businesses there at the marina. So then we headed off to Rosario. There's Captain Kirk looking all captainly. Oh, I do want to show this video of you fishing, or do you think it's worth it to stop and turn the video on?
I don't know.
I'm gonna try. We've got, so Rob and I, when we were offshore, we did a lot of fishing. Rob learned in Panama from a guy who was out that year, who was a really, really good fisherman. And we dragged 2 hand lines behind our boat, and our trip from the Galapagos to the Marquesas, I think we ate fresh fish 2/3 of the time.
Mhm.
And so, you know, there's nothing fancy about this. There's nothing sporting about it. There's
So
no
find the
playing
video and I'll
and
explain it.
fussing with it. You just
So-
get a hook and you put the fish on it and eat it.
So our hand lines, while she's looking for it, our hand lines are either 70 or 90 feet of tuna line, followed by 70-pound leader, and then it gets down to the lure. And I set my lures on 70 pounds because I just don't want to drag something ashore on the boat that's bigger than that. So we had snagged something, and we discovered that it was a
Teresa,
that it
it's
was a
not
barracuda.
showing.
It's not going.
No, we
We're-
can just see your desktop.
We're stuck on Windows Explorer.
Go
Poo.
share it.
Okay, so let me try and let me try and share. Stop share. And then get to Explorer. Sorry about the technical details. And then click on this.
No,
No,
no. So don't you have it up and running somewhere?
the fishing, no. Let me get it back up. Okay.
Stop it.
Stop it. Stop it. Yep.
Go
Okay.
back to the
Yep.
presentation.
Yep. And now
Stay share.
Okay. Sorry about that, you guys.
No, it didn't. It didn't work.
Do you see it, Heidi?
If it's on your desktop, Teresa, is it on your desktop? Okay, do screen share, go to desktop and then click on it and you should be able to bring it up.
It's right here. So now if you click on it, oh wait, that's a PDF.
But be on screen share before you click on it.
Okay, so, well, it's not actually on my desktop. It's in a folder on my desktop. I wonder if that's the problem. I'll try one more time. So I'm going to screen share.
See, that's the PDF.
Right, so
that doesn't do
it's
any
here
good.
in this folder, honey.
Because I think you need to share the video app that it opens up.
Mhm.
Right now, it's just sharing your desktop.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, well, I'm gonna try one more time. Uh-oh. All right, one more time. So I will open the video and
go
then,
off the screen share.
yeah, so I need to make that smaller though.
Well, now you're- See, it doesn't show up on the things that you can share.
Yeah. All right, I failed. Hello. It's
Yeah,
still
then-
playing.
So go back to sharing the PDF.
Yep, no, hold on, I gotta turn the video off because it's like making noise. Sorry, you guys. Technical difficulties. We didn't try this beforehand, obviously. Okay, so stop the share. Go back, share the screen.
See 1 minute of it, Teresa.
Sorry? What'd you say?
Started to work. It started to.
Giving up, it started to work.
Damn it. All right. So we'll just be done with be
Yep.
done with it.
So one of the things usually when you're fishing, different lures work in different areas. So Mexico, one color of squid works really well. South America, different one. French Polynesia, it was a different color combination, different lures working. One of the problems is that we didn't have anyone to ask. So I just took my South Pacific, green and yellow lure squids with red beads in them. And then the other thing is, because we were traveling, I threw the hand lines into my luggage with the hooks, but I didn't want to take a gaff with me. I figured, oh, we'll be able to get one there. Well, that was wrong. So we're catching this fish, though, and I told everybody, so here's the plan. We catch a fish, I'm just throwing it in the cockpit, and that's what we ended up doing.
And we're gonna have to move along
Yep,
now
so-
because it's almost 8 and we're supposed to be done with talking about sailing by now. So here's what happened. So we go out to this nice little anchorage that we pick, and there's the charts show us a good anchorage, and we motor in, and there's bommies everywhere. And for those of you that don't know, a bommie is a coral head that just comes straight out of the bottom, and varying depths and varying sizes. And you try not to anchor around them, and you certainly don't want to anchor on top of them, but this whole area was just covered in bommies. So the first day we go in and we motor around and we find a nice clear spot, drop the hook, and you can see it, it's only 30 feet deep. You see the hook hit the sand, you're good. The wind is blowing a nice constant speed, and so we sit all night on the hook. The next day we got up and we went out and up anchored and went out, like I showed you, around the corner to do some snorkeling on the other side of this point. And we come back in, and again, the wind is blowing really good. So we find a good spot, we drop the hook, it buries in sand. We go to sleep, the wind dies that night, and the boat starts to just move around on the anchor.
Because there was a lot of current
chain.
in the channel
There's
that we were.
a lot of current in this
So
channel.
the wind was usually enough to keep us into it, but at night the boat was wandering all over the place.
Yeah, that boat wandered 3 times around the bommie that night. And we get up the next morning and we need to get the boat back to Cayo Largo because our plan is to return the boat on an overnight passage. I had done a lot of research when we started planning this trip and looked at the pilot charts and the predicted winds and stuff. And I knew that I did not want to bash that boat all the way back into Cienfuegos, and the best chance of a nice calm passage back was overnight. And I love to do an overnight sail. And like I said, we had 5 experienced sailors and everybody was good with an overnight passage back. So we had to get back to Cayo Largo so we could take off that night and head back, and Bill was meeting us for our tour and stuff. So we get up in the morning and we start to up anchor and nothing. I mean, we got nothing. So this became.
Yeah, the only thing we knew was that we were wrapped around a coral head. So people go in, we'd point out
the lobster. Oh, wait. I'm going to back up one second because I forgot to show you guys. This is an important part of the story. The first night that we're there, just about sundown, we had seen these guys out on the reef, and it's lobster fishermen. And they came in that first night and sold us these 3 spectacularly delicious lobster tails, $5 a piece. And we took that barracuda and cut it up and baked it. And we had a delicious lobster and barracuda dinner, except for someone else ate chicken. And this is this awesome picture that Kelly took, or Heidi took, of this come around behind Kelly at dinner. But I got to get on to the story because we're really running late on time. So we're getting ready to up anchor, and we're not doing it. We're wrapped around this bommy. So I'll let you go ahead and tell us.
So the boat also, it was kind of a hack. Instead of the anchor going across the trampoline out to the support crossbeam, it actually came out of the front of the hull in an area that really wasn't all that well reinforced.
Right in here.
They just cut a hole in the front of the hull. There's probably some of the other pictures, we can probably see it. But right down in that hole, the anchor chain just dropped right out of it. And it wasn't really reinforced for it. We're trying to snub the anchor. The chain doesn't fit the gypsy, so it's slipping all the time. So in order for us to anchor, we had to have somebody up on top standing on. I mean, it was a real cluster. But we figured out how to do it. But now we're trying to free this chain, and we're driving the boat around, and it's coming really tight. And we are breaking snubbers like you wouldn't believe. We broke every line we brought. And the boat just did not have that many lines on it. There was no spare rode. There was an extra chain or an extra anchor, but no rode. So we were really kind of limited. We couldn't go drop another anchor and put the strain on that anchor and then mess with this one. We couldn't get the strain off of this one. The wind was blowing way too hard. It was, and we finally came to the conclusion that we were going to have to drop the anchor. We tried going around. We were stuck on one bommy, and I think we spent about 4 hours trying to get off the thing. And we finally decided we're just going to have to drop the anchor and tell them where it's at. So that's what we're doing here, is we're getting ready, because now, because of the weird way this thing was rigged, and with the anchor coming out of the bridge deck, we're actually having to feed lines and make sure that when we actually do end up letting everything go, that it actually goes free of the boat and floats a fender. So that was a lot of this. And then I think, and you can see at this point, the white and red line is actually the end of the, I hate to admit this, but the end of the main halyard. We were kind of out of lines, and it was sitting there, and I said, the heck with it. So we tied it on. And,
yeah, there's that lovely engineering there.
And, yeah, and you can see the hole in the where it went through. I was surprised we didn't break the deck at some point.
Or take the mast down. Or break Kelly's foot. Thank God Kelly was up there with her foot stomping on it to stop it every time it started running free.
It took all 5 of us to do this, and we were going to cut the chain and leave some chain on the boat. And I think that was a picture you have here of Heidi going and getting the bolt cutters.
Yeah.
But I could not dent that chain with those bolt cutters. I don't think those bolt cutters had been used in years. They were almost a massive rust. So at that point, we just decided we were just letting the whole thing out, and we were just going to let it go free and let them know where it was. But fortunately,
the good news is, ta-da, just as finally as we got it, and thank God Rob and Kirk and Heidi and Val and Kelly all figured out the logistics of getting the chain and the line. We had to go to the end of the oh shit line and actually cut it and cut it free, but they had the buoy line tied onto it perfectly, and it ran free, and we fell back. And just at that time, In comes Liz on her boat. Look at what a nice boat Liz has.
This is one of our other boats.
Yeah, this is the woman who organized the trip.
Yeah.
And so I called her on the radio. And
She
we're like,
obviously got to pick her boat first.
yeah, I called her on the radio. I'm like, hey, Liz, A, don't anchor near these bombies because if the wind dies tonight, you're going to get tangled up. And B, at the end of that fender is our anchor. And C, out there on the reef are those lobster fishermen. When they come in this afternoon and try and sell you lobster, tell them I will give them $50 if they'll go get my chain and my anchor off the bottom, and if you guys will bring it back to
And put it on Liz's boat.
Cienfuegos.
Yeah.
And it worked. They did it.
Well,
oh my gosh.
And one of the things that we had done, you know, we had taken turns being in the water, and the anchor was in 20 feet of water wrapped around the bottom. And, you know, in my youth, I probably could have done better, but it was all I could do just to free dive down there. I'd get down there and then I had to head back up. I had no time to do anything. And we didn't have any scuba gear on board, no other anchor. Anyway, so we ended up leaving the anchor, and that worked. The lobster fishermen came and got it.
Yeah, so here's some pictures.
And this is when we found out it was wrapped 3 times.
Yeah, this is Tammy Allen is the harbor master here on Bainbridge, and she and her partner were on Liz's boat. And so when the lobster fishermen came in, it all worked as planned, and they went out in the dink and went over to where the fender was, and Tammy got in the water and took some pictures and shared these pictures with us. So there they are, just unwrapping and unwrapping and unwrapping our chain. And they put it on the back of Liz's boat and brought it back into Cienfuegos the next day. So we were eternally grateful. We ended up having to stay at the dock until it was time to leave and head out back across the reef and do our sail home. But gosh, I had a video of these guys playing music. It was awesome. I might turn it on later just for the noise because it was so much fun. And then Val and I, the best part of the trip was sunrise watch was me and Val, and the wind came up, the motor came off, and we got to sail into Cienfuegos with the sunrise and some dolphins. So it was a really amazing trip in so many ways.
Okay, I need to get back to my notes. So we won't spend a lot of time on this. We're trying to concentrate on the sailing part and actually tobacco country because we thought it was a lot more interesting. But what we did after sailing is Bell had hired, before we left, we had met the driver of a yellow, it was an old cab that the government used to use, and they deemed it too bad to use in tourist service. So what they do is they lease them to citizens, and they're now a private business. And this thing was an old beater, yellow, minivan.
6-person.
And yeah, and it fit all of us. But you know, the guy was paying the government $1,800 a month for this thing, and we didn't feel too bad because we had him for a little over a week, and we figured we paid over half of his monthly fees, and he was quite happy to have the work. And I think he was, I don't know. I mean, it was his cab, and he'd go anywhere, and I think it was what $150 a day or something.
I don't remember.
I don't, yeah. But it was a really good deal. So Bell picked us up at Cienfuegos at the marina. Funny story. So here's a English professor, works at the university. Cuban people cannot go down to the boats. She could not walk down to the dock in the marina. They will not allow Cubans down, the average citizen, to go down there when there's a boat with a motor in it. A little bit of their history, I guess. So we went to Trinidad. So it's in central Cuba. Go back one. It's colonial old town, cobblestone streets. It's sugar plantations is what was there, and that's what it's known for. It has a lot of colonial mansions that were built with sugar plantation money. This is an ox cart going down the street. The funny thing here is that the farmers get to keep 20%, 80% goes to the government, but you find that, Mike, are you screen sharing?
Hey, Mike, stop.
Go, just screen share over the top of it. What's going on? There we go. So the problem is that all the trucks and machinery are owned by the government. And if the farmers use any of that, they pay more to the government. So there's a huge number of them that are using animals, ox carts, plows pulled by oxen, just to avoid more money going to the government because the individual farmers just don't have the machinery. So it wasn't uncommon to see ox carts rolling down the road. So this is, let's see, we'll try to do this quickly. There's not that many slides here. So this is Plaza Mayor. That's the Church of Holy Divinity. This is the main plaza in Trinidad. When we were driving in, there was these horrendous clouds. And just to the right of the church, there was a square that was a major internet hotspot, which was really kind of funny because when we got there was all these people huddled around on their phones and tablets or whatever they had to connect. The internet was relatively new there. I don't know how, I don't remember how long they had it. I think it was a matter of months. For us, we had to go buy an internet access card, either from a hotel or our guide knew where to get them. And then you log on when you get to one of these hotspots for whatever number of minutes that you bought. And even in our Casa Particulars and the one in Old Town, there was Wi-Fi in the room, but you had to have one of these government internet cards to connect. And once you connected, it opened up that hotspot to anybody who wanted it. And the people running the B&B knew that. So when you opened it up, all of a sudden there was tons of locals down in the street piggybacking on your Wi-Fi. So it was always really slow. Anyway, so that's it rained. We were in, there's, you know, a few museums there, again, government run, and then the tourist shops are government run. And it poured down rain and the streets turned into literal rivers. And then we stayed at a B&B there. We had a hard time getting Belle and the driver to actually eat with us. Belle did a couple of times, the driver never did, but they would go off and get their own rooms. And then they'd pick us up the next morning and off we went. So not a lot here because we really want to concentrate on Vinales.
Vinales, oh my God, it was so beautiful. And I'm not gonna be able to show you my video of how beautiful it was. But like I said, we went back into Havana. We got a B&B in the new section of Havana, left our stuff, hopped back in the bus the next day and drove up to Vinales. So this is a bit of a panorama. You can see we're at a little tourist overlook here as we come into the valley. Here's one of those fancy hotels that we can't go to. We didn't really want to even because we were really enjoying our staying with the Cuban people in the casas. But the valley of Vinales was just absolutely gorgeous. This, I think, is a picture that someone took that we're not giving credit to. Heidi or Kelly, did you take this one?
I think it's Kelly's.
Kelly, is this yours? Yeah, beautiful, beautiful shot. Just stunningly gorgeous countryside here. So I'm going to just flip through these pictures real quick. Rob went out during the morning and as a good photographer would, caught a lot of morning sunlight and just took some really interesting pictures. We were staying at 2 different B&Bs. And then we went on a horseback trip out to a co-operativo and did a little tour. And oh gosh, I'm not gonna be able to show Val's cigar video. And got the tour. So I'm gonna let Heidi speak to that because she took really good notes. And I'm gonna pass on her website to Diane to share with you guys afterwards because Heidi did 4 really good write-ups of this trip on her blog. Kirk and Heidi are hiding from COVID in Mexico on their boat right now. And so they've got a nice blog and a website, SV Due West. And so Heidi took really good notes. So I'm gonna let her speak to this. I'm gonna just flip through a few pictures real quick and then I'll stop sharing. Or actually, I can share and Heidi, you can just come onto the audio and talk. But this is the casas that we stayed at. And I'd love to hear from Val or Kelly, because Val and Kelly were in this very rustic casa, and they had bike screens over the bed, and something happened at 2 or 3 in the morning. And maybe Val and Kelly can share that after Heidi talks about the farm. I don't quite remember. But again, these are just some pictures. Rob went out in the morning and took some pictures at daybreak of the farmers working the fields. This is a man plowing his field with his oxen, very typical way, like he said.
That was actually the owner of the farm we were staying in. And he was actually plowing under a tobacco field. And I asked him why. And what I understood was that they only, I think they let tobacco go to leaf 3 or 4 times. I forget the actual number of times. And then after that, they plow it under and start over. But the government had told him to plant corn. So he was plowing under his tobacco to plant corn for the government.
And this is a little out of sequence, but this is Kelly, of course, being our intrepid farm girl, taking the oxen for a little tour down with her hoe. And apparently this is not as easy as it looks, not that it even looks easy. I think that was quite a chore. This is, again, another one of Rob's really pretty pictures at sunrise. And this is our horseback trip. The funny thing is, Belle, here's Belle, our guide. Belle had no intention of going. We had no intention of going without her. We paid. Belle had never been on a horse in her life. And so this is our caballero, who I don't think he spoke very much English, but he literally just tied Belle's horse onto his and towed her along. She didn't have to ride, but it was awesome to have her along on the trip. And then this is the farmland out there. And we sat and learned about the co-operativo, and he rolled us some cigars, and Val tried the cigar. I think that's the last picture. So Heidi, you want to chime in and come on board and tell us a little bit more about these co-operativos?
Sure. So, hey, everybody, we're Kirk and Heidi, and we're currently coming to you live from Mexico. We're in Barra de Navidad on our boat right now. And really super fun time with this whole gang in Cuba. I think Belle was one of the highlights of our trip. She really just made the trip for everybody. She was such an amazing tour guide. And the people that we stayed with in Vinales, I think were actually some of her distant relatives. So she sort of had an in to this farm area, but the whole landscaping there is these limestone outcroppings, the karst, where they were full of caverns and things like that. We went in some caves and things while we were there. But on the co-operativo that we went to was owned by 6 different families, or actually I guess it's owned by the government, but 6 different families farm it together as a cooperative. And they have to give 90% of all the tobacco to the government, and then 80% of the other crops they grew: mangoes, avocados, guavas. They grow coffee. The sugar cane, actually the sugar cane and the guavas, they had to give 100% of the sugar cane and the guavas to the government to make rum, because that particular area of the Pinar del Rio is what that province was called. And there's a special rum that comes from Pinar del Rio. So they give 100% of the sugar cane and the guava that they use in the rum to the government, and then in return they get 20% of the manufactured rum back. So it was kind of funny, because Kirk had asked them, well, when the government comes to take your 80 or 90% of everything, do you have somebody that is standing there to make sure that they're taking their fair share? And they just laughed and they said, it's the government. They can take whatever they want. They can take 100% if they want. There's nothing we can do about it. But each family gets their own very small little plot. I think it was about 200 feet by 500 feet maybe, where they could grow anything they wanted, and the government couldn't take that. But this particular farm that we visited was completely organic. They did everything by hand. They had no machinery at all. Everything was done by hand or with oxen or with horses. Absolutely no mechanical equipment.
And that's one of the things that is so striking about Vinales. There are roads coming into it, and there is a little town, but once you get off the main road where we stayed and all, there are literally no cars.
Yeah, no.
There are no cars, no tractors, no machineries, no pumps, nothing motorized, nothing. Only horses, oxen, whatever. And we were there only, how many hours were we there?
At the farm, like 3 hours, I think. At
Well,
the farm.
no, in
Vinales?
Vinales, a day,
A day and a half.
day and a half. It seemed like we'd been there a week. We did so much stuff, and it was such an interesting and amazing place. It was stunningly beautiful, and what I thought it was so amazing was you literally went back in time 100 years.
Yeah,
no problem.
for sure.
Just exactly.
Well, it was
crazy.
interesting because when we all started planning this Cuba trip, we had seen, like right before we started planning this Cuba trip, we had read an article from Cruising World. I think it was the April 2017 Cruising World had an article about cruising Cuba. And we had read that, and there was a photo of Vinales that just blew us away. And we said, oh my God, if and when we ever get to Cuba, we are going there. So when we all got together on that phone call that Teresa was talking about with our food allergies and all that type of thing, we were making our wish list of what parts of Cuba we all wanted to see. And Vinales was at the very top of our list. And we had to kind of juggle some things around and really like beg everybody for, please, can we go to Vinales? And it worked out. And I think that everybody overall was really glad that we went, because it, like these guys said, it was really one of the highlights of the whole trip. But with the cooperativos, we saw the whole process of how they grow the tobacco and how they manufacture the cigars. And one of the really interesting things I thought, maybe from being a woman, was that once the tobacco leaves are dried, men are not allowed to touch them because their big rough hands will break them. And so only women with their smaller, more, I don't know, like softer hands are allowed to touch the tobacco leaves for the cigars. So it's mostly predominantly women that make the cigars. And also each farm, we saw the whole process of how they make the cigars, and each farm has their own special sauce, I guess you would say, that they make to ferment the tobacco leaves in. So at this particular farm, they created this fermentation sauce out of rum and guava and honey and mango, maybe something like that. And then they take the tobacco leaves and soak it for about 3 months, all rolled up in a palm frond, soak it for about 3 months, and that softens up the tobacco leaves and gets out all of the acid, bitter taste from it, and then they roll the cigars. So that was kind of interesting to see. And then what else? They grew coffee there, and they made amazing, well, they harvested, I guess they didn't make, but they harvested a really amazing honey from the area. And one of the things that we learned is that the bees, I don't know if it's all bees or just the bees that they have there, but they only fly in about a 2,000, I think they said like 2,000 yard area or something like that. So that they know, since their farm is totally organic, where they place the different hives, the bees won't fly outside of that. And so they won't get any pesticides or any contamination from their bees. And all of their beehives were totally natural. They didn't have wooden box hives like we're used to seeing. They had hives up in trees, and then they had a type of ground bee that was in holes in the ground. And so they harvested everything naturally, and they kept very good tabs on the hives and how often they harvested. And it was only like once a year from each hive, and they harvested at different times of years to make sure to not over harvest and leave enough honey for the bees. So it's just very cool to see how they were very sustainably organized and very organic, and everything they did was like it would have been 100 years ago. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. Thanks, Heidi. It's very truly back 100 years. It was really amazing, and really the highlight, besides the sailing part, the highlight of the trip. And we all did bring home a bottle of rum, and I got to say, I almost cried the day I finished my my Havana or my Cuban rum. So Rob has got he's got a video on another session here. He's going to try and take the screen and share a video and see if we can get this to go. Can you guys see?
Yeah, we can see it.
You got audio there, hun?
We can see Val and her cigar.
Yeah, but now he's got no audio.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to.
Oh, unmute yourself. Well, shoot.
Is it?
All right. Okay.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Oops, I'm gonna turn that off. I think.
Rob, mute yourself.
Yep, yes, yes.
Where's my mute button again? There.
Okay, so let's see, it's 8:25. We're just going to talk a little bit real quickly about Cuba now. Unless Val or Kelly want to tell us the story about the 3 o'clock bugs. Kelly's smiling, but no, she's shaking her head. Okay, Rob, you want to talk about Cuba now?
Sure. So yeah, so this is kind of modern Cuba. It's a little bit it's a little bit of everything. It was kind of what didn't fit in other places in the talk. So this is a Plaza de Revolucion. We actually visited this when we were doing our little tour in the Grand Cars. We parked across the street and walked over to the Plaza de Revolucion. It has a big memorial to Jose Marti, who was a big hero of Cuba's independence from Spain. There's a lot of statues to Marti around Havana. And then on the buildings, there's the heroes of the revolution. So it's Che, Cienfuegos, and Fidel Castro are all on and I don't think we have pictures of all of them, but you get the idea. So this is interesting. This is the best grocery store in Havana. It took us a while to get there because I think a couple times it was closed or we just weren't there timing wise. But this is kind of what it looked like. That's a meat case back there, completely empty. And I think there's about 6 different items on this aisle. So they just repeat. And it really is the case that I think we were looking for chocolate. There was no chocolate in the store. There just wasn't a lot of stuff to get. You know, I think most of the Cubans are waiting in lines for food when it's available, you know, or black market, the actual stores. You know, this is another part, you know, where the locals are opening businesses. I love the name of that clothing store, Clandestina. It's perfect for a under the radar sort of a clothing store. And then the bottom right there, the tourist stuff, you know, where you buy Cuba license plates and all the little figurines and stuff that all the tourist shops sell. Restaurant wise, one of our favorites, actually, it was within walking distance of our last B&B, was Havana Blues. It was somebody's house, but it was really well done. And again, you know, they can have a restaurant in the house, and they're all serving pretty much the same food. I mean, it's chicken, fish, rice, black beans, shrimp. You don't get a whole lot of, but it's how does the restaurant cook that food? You're not going to get potatoes. You're not going to get a lot of vegetables. You're not going to get a lot of other stuff. So everyone has, you know, every restaurant we went into, it seemed like it was the same menu, but some of them executed it much better than others. And this was one, I think our last 3 days there, I think we had dinner there twice.
Yeah.
It was really good. Government buildings, of course, are kept up really nice. You know, that's where the money is. They have nice facades with lights on at night. I think the one on the right is a hotel that the Army was redoing. The Army seems to own all the hotels, and that's where the money goes to the Army. So the picture on the right is Old Town. Picture on the left, I think it was in an area near Old Town, something that was being renovated. And you can tell that they have a lack of, I didn't realize until we were there, most of the wood there is hardwood. They don't have fir trees. So, you know, scaffolding is pretty precious and reused over and over and over again. And they had scaffolding up. There's no way, I didn't want to walk under it, let alone get on it if you had to do work. But it was really interesting looking at the conditions and the stuff that they would use. And, you know, I mean, I lived in the Middle East for years and I was kind of used to seeing, you know, some pretty shaky construction techniques, but that scaffolding was a new one for me. And, you know, again, Havana, you know, it's just this big old and new, you know, you've got old buildings, old cars, you know, alongside of newer, I mean, you see that car on the right is a Toyota. And then there's a lot of Russian cars, cars I hadn't seen since I was in the Middle East, Ladas and also Russian motorcycles. Some motorcycles I just couldn't even figure out where they were made. I don't know what they were, but it was, you know, it's a really nice place though. It was fun. I think we had a good time.
Well, and it was safe. You know, the big thing was don't mess with the tourists. Those are our dollars. The government would very harshly.
Well, the crime against a tourist was jail time.
Yeah.
So
hands down.
They didn't mess. You know, this was another government. This is the art museum. You know, and I just love the buildings and the doors and, you know, the bright colors. I thought it was pretty cool. You know, you go in there and, you know, really nice courtyard. This is, hang on, I think I wrote it down here somewhere. This is the big name. It's the Cathedral of the Virgin Mary of the Immaculate Conception of Havana. Anyway, so it was just a big church. There was lots of churches there. Some of them were pretty bare and didn't have much. Some of them had absolutely gorgeous stained glass in them, and they were really gorgeous. This was something that kind of caught my eye. They still use glass insulators on the power lines. I hadn't seen the glass insulator. I think I have one out of my shop from my childhood, found along a railroad track. We used to do that when I was in grade school. So this is really interesting. This is a 46 DeSoto. This is one of the grand cars. It's a taxi. And I just love that car. It was really gorgeous. But you know, for me, it's kind of it says it all for Cuba. You know, pretty car, but then you look on the back and you start seeing where, well, we kind of painted over some rust here. You know, it's and a lot of Cuba kind of had that feel. You know, it's kind of we're glossing over what's really there, and it's a matter of money, you know, and priorities. I mean, these guys are all keeping these cars up themselves, and you know, so if he's not a body worker, he better have a friend who is, and you know, wants to exchange some mechanical work or something. You know, so I mean, I don't mean to talk negatively about them. I think that the guys do a great job with what they have, and I think they're very inventive, and they make their own parts, and it's phenomenal. But you know, you kind of look at things and you go, wow, that's gorgeous, but you don't want to look under the covers. Yeah, you don't dig deep. No. And that's pretty much, I think, says it for Cuba. It's just, you know, you got to remember, it's not a free society. They can't buy what they want. They can't import things. You can't get it.
There's no there. And
there's,
and you know,
make do, and they're really good at making do.
There's a lot you can say about Cuba. It was one of the most interesting trips we've done in years. And you know, politics aside, those are lovely people. And I know I cried my eyes out when I left Belle behind. And I don't think I was the only one. You know, she's our age and she's spent her whole life under this communist regime, and life is not easy for them, and it never has been. And you know, it is what it is. You know, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to get into the politics, but I think the Cuban people deserve a lot more than what they've got, and I'm hopeful for the future for them, because they're lovely people and it's a beautiful place, and I would love to go back again someday. I'm going to stop sharing right now. Diane, we're running a little bit late, but Rob's got another slide deck of just the cars that's really interesting for people that want to see more about the cars. Diane, do you want to do a short Q&A, or do you want to just wait questions until after Rob's slide deck?
Well, I think a short Q&A would be good before changing topics into strictly cars. I see that some questions were already answered in the chat, and Heidi put a link up to some more pictures and a blog, so that's good. I was what that grass building was in the farm area.
So that was a drying shed for the tobacco. Okay. So that's where they dried the tobacco.
Were the sides of the building made out of grass, or?
Yeah, they were all sort of palapa palm fronds. So the roof and the sides were made of palm fronds. And then the sides of the buildings had openings on both sides to let the breeze through. and that would help in the drying process of the tobacco.
And they rotated the rails with the tobacco from the top to the bottom in a sequence to dry it properly.
So as the tobacco leaves dried, they'd move them up higher into the rafters, and then they'd bring new green leaves and put them in the bottom. And if you, in our blog, we have a couple of like sequence photos that kind of shows that.
Great.
This is Steve. I was wondering about, did you fly from the US or did you have to fly to Mexico first and then to Cuba or what?
No, we flew in from the US. We flew from Boston.
On JetBlue.
On JetBlue. Yeah, Heidi and Kirk, you guys came from Mexico City, right?
From Mexico, yeah. But right now, because the Trump administration has completely closed Cuba to Americans, I don't know if things will change come January, but as of right now, no US airlines are flying into Cuba. And so you have to go through Canada or Mexico right now. But at that time that we all went, there was JetBlue and a couple of other, I think Delta and United maybe were all flying into Cuba. So we went directly from Mexico City.
Yeah, but flying from where part of US? It's kind of big, you know?
No, we came in from Boston, but then we flew back into Fort Lauderdale. And I think, Val, where did you fly in and out of? You were separate, right?
I went in and out of New York.
In and out of New York. That's right, because you stopped to see your daughter.
And I flew from Florida.
Yeah, and I think Miami, I mean, when American Airlines were flying there, I think a lot of them flew from Miami as well. But right now you would have to go from Canada or Mexico.
Yeah. And what on the chart, are those in meters or feet?
I'm guessing, I'm just thinking, because you know what, that was my Navionics. And so I didn't really think about it when I opened up that Navionics. I think my default is feet on my Navionics app.
Okay.
Any other questions before we start with cars?
Teresa?
One last question. Did you succeed in getting any good snorkeling in out on the reef there?
No, the first day we just snorkeled around behind the boat a little bit. Really, it was just too breezy out there. So, I mean, the reefs looked really healthy. The day that we went around the corner and re-anchored and went out to the edge of the reef was just spectacularly healthy. So it's definitely worth another trip and waiting for some good weather because there was lots of good stuff to see. Obviously, the lobster were huge. So another day.
Yeah, I heard the reef is in very good shape in Cuba, and a lot of the natural surroundings are in good shape.
Yes.
If any of you guys do go visit Cuba, take lots of toothpaste and soap and shampoo and conditioner. They are desperate for that. That's really hard for them to get there. And we took a lot of that stuff for Belle to distribute to her friends and family. But, you know, we could have brought a whole suitcase full of toothpaste and it would have just been snapped up like that because they just can't get the very basic stuff.
Yeah, one of the things we didn't talk about was, Linnea, I'm going to come back to you. I know you had a question, hon. But one of the things we didn't talk about was the provisions and the things that the people get from the government every month. And Bill told us, you know, when right after the revolution, you know, this is truly a communist society, and they would have a list of things that they would get every month to feed them a certain amount of protein and fruits and vegetables and all of the things they need. And over the years, the list is just like getting shorter and shorter. And like now, if you get a few extra eggs if you're pregnant, and you know, it's just the times are really tough for them right now.
One of the things that we did with the charters, we had ordered like 3 dozen eggs, and I didn't realize at the time how hard eggs were to get in Cuba. It was like we were the richest people in eggs, you know, in the town, because we had so many eggs on the boat, and we ended up giving all of that food to our guide when we got off. Because it was so valuable to them, and to us, you know, it's like, okay, you know, it's a little extra food, but it's food they can't get.
Yeah, because we all ate the normal amount of eggs.
We couldn't figure out what a normal amount of eggs is.
Linnea, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Can I say something? Can I say something in that regard? One of the things that is the most interesting, you didn't see it from these slides, but we drive through for hours on these freeways that have one or two cars you pass every so often. And acres, thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of arable land that they can't harvest, not being used for anything.
Yeah.
And they're starving. There's no food in the grocery stores, but there's tons of arable land to grow things, but people aren't allowed to do it. The government
Well,
doesn't.
there's also a bit shortage of water to farm that too. So that's a problem there.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, Linnea.
Okay, if you tip your guides or like Belle, would they have to, couldn't they like save that money? Obviously, I'm sure they have to declare some of it, but if you gave her a tip, couldn't she keep it?
No, and realize that Belle was an illegal guide, right? So I mean,
I don't think she declared it.
She couldn't. If they had stopped us and asked us about her, she was a friend showing us around town.
Yeah.
She wasn't officially a guide. So all of the money that went to her was under the table because she can't claim part of it. She can't admit she's doing that.
Okay.
So it's all under the table.
Like these guys were saying that Belle is a university professor, an English professor at university, and she gets paid $40 a month as a university level English professor. And with that $40, she takes care of her 70-year-old mom who's in poor health. So that $40 has to feed and clothe and do everything for her and her mom both. Her mom actually was an accountant for the government for her whole life, and her pension from the government is $15 a month. So the money just doesn't go far at all. And so they all have these black market jobs. And the book that I put in the chat, The Cuban Congo, is really an inside view to Cuba that we read before we went. And it's a fascinating book if anybody is interested about how the black market works and how everybody's got different jobs and just, you know, working the deal. It's pretty amazing.
We were with Belle walking, and this woman walked by with a bag full of frozen chicken. And Belle said, "Where'd you get that chicken?" And she said, "Around the corner over." And she said, "I'll be right back." And Belle went and
she just left us. She said, "Guys, I gotta go." And she left us for like, I don't know, half an hour or something. And she had to go get in line to go buy chicken.
She bought the chicken. So, but it isn't available everywhere. It's just spotty wherever you happen to be, and right place, right time, and boom, she was part of the deal. It was. When we got there first, and when Rob and Teresa and Kelly and Val were coming, we thought, well, we'll just run out to a shop. We'll buy a couple avocados and some totopo, some chips, and we'll welcome. And there's no such thing. There's no Oxos. There's no 7-Elevens. There's no stores. You can't even buy that stuff. It's not even available.
And the other thing, like how we brought so much food with us, not only for the cruise, but just to have with us for snacks or whatever. In most countries you fly to, like if you even fly to Mexico or most other countries you've ever been to, they don't like you to bring food. You have to fill out the form on the airplane. Are you bringing any meat or anything like that? You can't bring food. Cuba doesn't care. You can bring whatever you want into Cuba because they don't want you buying food from their stores and taking it away from the people. So they truly are like, sure, come and bring all your own food and leave what you don't eat behind you. So take food. If you go to Cuba, take lots of food and toothpaste.
Yeah, don't feel bad about bringing suitcases full of food.
Yeah, and Linnea, you know, interestingly, Belle's daughter, she was a dancer and went when she was young.
For the National Ballet.
Yeah, for the National Ballet, came to the U.S. on a trip, and she
defected.
She defected. She got asylum in the U.S. and she lives in Miami. And Belle actually manages to save money and fly to Mexico so she can see her daughter once in a while. She's on track to. She's been approved to get citizenship and immigrate here through her daughter, chain migration, which is awesome. And so she's just waiting for an appointment now. But you know, her life is really hard for Cubans because they can't get stuff. But you know, there is some bright side. Belle has done some traveling and you know, gets out of the country and gets to Mexico and sees her daughter once in a while. So we're looking forward to seeing her here soon.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let Rob take it now. He's got some super awesome.
This is a set of slides that I did for PSCC just to it just scrolled through the slideshow before and during the break, just to put some cars up. So there's going to be a few duplicates here. I haven't redone it for this, but we'll go through it really quick. I am not an expert on old cars, so most of what I know, I looked up on the internet. So I'll tell you what I think the cars are, but if there's somebody out there that's an expert, you know, feel free to speak up. So this.
Do you guys see the cars? Sorry?
No, we're looking at your file manager right now.
Okay, so I have the other one working, so
yeah,
there we go.
There we go.
Got it?
That's the cars.
Okay.
Yep, red car.
So yeah, and this was in our regular slide presentation earlier when I was talking about the grand cars. I believe this is a 1952 Chevy style line. And then this, and there was a lot of Bel Airs, but this is a 57 Chevy Bel Air. And then of course, this is that 46 DeSoto, which I just love. I think that is such a cool car. So this is a 56 Chevy Bel Air, and there's a little story here. When we were going to that market, we were going to walk from the hotel, and it was a pretty hot day, and we thought, nah, let's take a cab. And a couple guys on the street corner heard us talking, and one of them said, "Taxi?" And we said, "Sure." And we were going to walk around the corner, and I was pretty sure we were going to, you know, get into some beater Russian thing, and you know, that would barely make it. We walk around, and here is this 56 Chevy Bel Air. This thing was the most perfect car that I saw there. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was a $7 ride to the market. As you're looking at these pictures, tell me what's wrong with this car. So that was the inside. This thing was just immaculate, inside and out. It was absolutely gorgeous. And it was column shift. Guy said it was original motor. It had 1 million miles on it. I don't know how accurate that was, but and he just, it had been in his family. So there's the hood. I mean, just fabulous. You know, all these cars where they painted over defects, not this one. This thing, they had put some money into this, even in Cuba. So there's your first big clue of what's wrong with this car. And then that was the inside and the seat covers. So anyone have an idea what's wrong with this car?
The radio doesn't work?
Nope, that's a cassette deck. Cassette decks were invented in the 60s.
Yeah.
When I was in the car, I was thinking, cassette deck? And then I forgot about it. And when I was going through the pictures, I went and looked it up, and cassettes were not invented in 1956. So this is an aftermarket radio. Just a little minor thing.
It's a kit car, right?
It's a what?
It's a kit car, right? Built off of a different frame of a car?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think you can get after, I mean, I went and looked, you can get aftermarket period radios that have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all kinds of stuff in them. And I think that they just replace this radio with, but I think I really do believe it's a genuine 56 Chevy Bel Air. But I could be wrong. So that's the car that Kirk and Heidi took to the airport. Kirk, do you remember what that was?
It's a 53 Chevy, and it is perfect in every way, just like the other. It has the radio's a little different and all, but yeah, it's pretty well together. And the wheels are obviously not stock, but it ran well. A lot of these cars, like Rob said, some of them are original engines, but most of them have been re-engined with diesel Toyotas, diesel whatevers. And we have a beautiful Pontiac that we saw around, and he opened up the hood, and it's a straight 6 Pontiac engine, Toyota engine in it, but they get tremendous longevity out of them, and the parts are available, and it's a lot easier for them. This car and a lot of the others did have original engines in them, but the parts are really hard to get. Tires are really hard to get for these cars. They wait months and months to have them shipped in.
So this took me a little while to figure out what it is. I think it's a 55 Buick Roadmaster.
Yeah, it's a big.
That's what I think it is. Definitely a Buick. Took me a while to nail down the year because it just looks just slightly off somehow. It might just be the lighting. And then this guy's a 52 Chevy. And this is actually working as a cab. We walked past it. This one, I'm not 100% sure on. It's either a 51 or 52 Chevy.
They're also similar. It's yeah.
Yeah, you're really getting into hood ornaments and little, trim things to try to figure it out. So this was a car that was in Cienfuegos, and it was just parked. And the important thing, we didn't go looking for cars. I mean, these were just cars that you just walk past. They're all over the place. This one, and I got some other pictures of it. It is an absolute cherry 52 Chevy style line that was sitting in somebody's driveway, fenced driveway. Absolutely gorgeous car. Again, back to the car that took you guys to the airport. So here's that car. So this was down in Cienfuegos. We had gone to the store, and I was waiting for everyone to finish shopping, and this car was sitting there, and I started walking around taking pictures of it, but just absolutely gorgeous. And this isn't a grand car. It doesn't have the label on it. It's a private car, but it's absolutely perfect condition. One more picture of the airport ride. So there's that 52 style line from the back. That's just a 55 Bel Air. I think again, this was just a private car. It isn't a taxi and it isn't a grand car. I don't know why I have so many pictures of your airport ride, guys. Another, that's a 56 Bel Air.
Blue car, what is that thing off to the side? It looks like a seat hanging out.
What are we talking about?
The thing that's hanging off.
There's that metal.
Yes.
Yeah, what is that?
That's a piece of chrome. It goes around the top of the front of the fender.
Oh, it goes around the front of the fender.
Yeah.
It's a rock guard for rock.
Yeah. It looks like it's coming out.
Yeah, but Kirk, who'd want a rock guard that you don't want to scratch, right? I'd cry if a rock hit that.
Well, the fender sticked out, so rocks can get it.
Yeah. Let's see. I think that's a 54 Bel Air. You really get into, hood ornaments and stuff to figure out what these things are. We were in Cienfuegos. Go ahead.
Did they have anything besides Chevys? I mean, American cars like Fords or?
There was some Fords and Plymouths.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the car that Kirk and Heidi were in was a Plymouth or a Dodge. And the car we were in, and I think we'll come up to it here pretty soon, was a Ford. So there was a few. There's more Chevys than anything. I mean, this is a 56 Chevy Bel Air, and it was just sitting. We had gone into the hotel just to walk around and see the sights, and this was sitting parked outside.
So one thing about the cars is we were saying everywhere we drove, there were private cars, like Rob was saying, some of the cars that he was showing, and some of them are painted, some of them are not painted. They're just used by everybody, doctors and everybody for getting around. We were in our taxi one time, and a guy in his regular Plymouth big old sedan was driving by, and he was a doctor taking a woman to the hospital. And one thing that you see, there's a 55 or 6 Ford in the back behind.
I was gonna say, there's our Ford.
Yeah, and one thing you can tell when the revolution came, because 59, there's a few 59 cars. That's latest that you see, and 59 and earlier, and after 59, no more American cars.
Yep.
And it's quite distinct.
Yep. But like Kirk says, here's a Ford back here. That white and turquoise car is a Ford. You see the front end of our van, our taxi. So it kind of gets you an idea of what we were driving around in for way too long. This car, I really had to look this one up. I remember seeing this absolutely gorgeous car. This is a 1946 Chevy Aero sedan Fleetline. And it was absolutely beautiful. Definitely an eye catcher. It is a grand car, so it is licensed, and it does have the taxi sign up in the window. Yeah, there's just the front fender of another car that we'd already talked about. We already talked about this guy. We've now seen it 3 times. I don't know what this is. This was just locals out for a car. This is not a grand car. This is just an old car that they were driving. I can't see enough of it to tell what it is, and I can't read anything on it.
I don't know.
Looks almost like a Cadillac emblem.
Yeah. This guy, so Kirk, here's your 59. This is a 59 Chevy Impala.
That's one of the last, yeah.
Yep, that's a 59 Chevy Impala. Pretty cool. And this is a 55 Chevy Bel Air. This is not a grand car, but this was in the taxi service. And while we're standing there, this guy pulls up, and there was like 4 people in it, and 2 got out and 1 more got in. So for the locals, the taxis are kind of this rotating thing. We've run into that other places in the South Pacific and in the Caribbean, you know, where you share taxis. And this was a shared taxi. It was running, nothing fancy, but I wouldn't mind owning it. And again, I think that's a car we've already seen. So one more interesting thing, and I think this is the last picture I have of this Plymouth, and I forgot to mention it, but on the earlier picture we had of this, and I took so many pictures of the back of your guys' car because they had LED lights in the rear view mirrors, in the side view mirrors. So there was a red arrow every time it went to turn. And it was like, wow. So, you know, it looked like a stock standard original mirror, but it had LED lights in it. And I forgot to mention that when we saw this car before from behind. And then of course, another picture, crazy tourists, you never know who's gonna pull up beside you. And then this is Val sitting in our car, and this is clearly a Ford. I don't have too many pictures of the whole car, but this actually had the covered rear wheels and a lot of fancy work over the back of it.
You look good there, Val.
Gorgeous car, all white interior. And again, you look too close, you know, it doesn't look bad, but it was a really nice car. The driver here was a hired driver. It was the only car that I got into or talked to that it wasn't the owner driving the car. So apparently some family owned a couple of them, and they hired somebody that they knew to drive the car. So our driver here was not the owner of the car.
In our car too, Rob, our driver was also a hired driver.
Yeah, there was a woman, older woman whose husband had died, and the car was in the garage, and she said, well, let's put it out for service. So she hired this young guy to drive the car. And he clearly didn't know about lugging the engine, because he did not shift near like he should have to keep the revolutions up. But oh well.
You'd think those Cubans would be better at keeping revolutions up, wouldn't you? And then well, yeah, that's the car we already talked about. Like I said, I took a lot of pictures of it, just absolutely stunningly gorgeous. And that's the end of the cars.
All right. Thank you for that, Rob. Anybody have any questions about the cars or questions that have come up? Anything else you want to ask? All right, Diane, back to you.
That was so much fun.
That was awesome.
Thank
That was
you for
great.
doing that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, really enjoyed the car part and the other part. What a fascinating place.
Yeah, it's worth a trip, I would say, you know, especially with the hope that a new administration will open it back up to Americans, that, you know, it's an emotionally difficult trip, but it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
I saw a cruise ship in one picture.
Yep.
Is there
And that was
a-
the last ones.
Well, yeah, foreign cruise ships can go. It's just Americans can't
Yeah.
go in. So, they can load up with Europeans
Yeah.
and still go in there. But
And-
Americans can't visit by cruise ship. You can't get off the ship.
So I assume there's a lot of Canadian and European tourists?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. South American and
Americans.
yep.
Well, and Canadians and
Australia.
Europeans have been going to Havana for years, even back when, before Obama kind of opened it up a bit. And, you used to go and Americans would go and go through another country and not admit they'd been there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a vacation destination for Europeans for a long time.
I'm pretty sure that whole section up along the North Shore, so Havana was off here, and there was a big set of islands up on the North Shore. I'm pretty sure that's all heavily touristed with big resort hotels and, for the non-Americans.
Yeah, and all the other tourists, all the Europeans, the Russians, the Canadians, they all stay at the government hotels. It's just that Americans have been forbidden to go there. And actually, we ate at one of the government-owned restaurants, and it was the worst meal that we had on the whole entire trip. It was just terrible.
And when you go to the airport, the JetBlue and the United, whatever, there's a few. Airflot has a row of desks, and Airflot has probably 20 spots there to buy tickets and all this stuff. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, that communist connection. That's right. All right, Diane.
I'd like to ask, is there still much of a Russian presence there, or has Russia mostly abandoned Cuba?
I'm not sure. Russia's been supporting them since Russia fell.
The only Russian cars I saw were older ones. I didn't see any current Russian cars or anything to look newer. There was Russian tourists, but I don't know that they're really influencing them or spending a lot of money.
Yeah,
there.
I think Russia pulled a lot of their finances decades ago when the whole Russian empire first started crumbling. I'm not sure. I'm just recalling.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the reef looked healthy and that there was a lot of big lobster.
Oh yeah, it's worth it. It's worth a trip. And there are other charter companies there. Dream Yacht, which is one of the big European international charter companies, they have boats there. We didn't pick our boat. We didn't pick our charter company. Liz, who was on the other boat, she organizes that. She found us through Women Who Sail, and then she started this meetup thing with this little group called Women Over 50 or something. And so, she's the one organizing our trip to Croatia next September. And so she gets she tries to collect as many people together as she can to go charter, and then negotiates with the charter companies to drive down the price of the charter boats, and then passes that savings along to us. So we're going to Croatia with her in September on another trip, hopefully with better boats this time, but the same group.
So is she rounding up like as many people as possible, and you might end up cruising with a few other boats?
We've got 3 boats now, and she'd love to add more boats. So if anybody would be happy to. She was going to join tonight, but she had a big long road trip today, so she couldn't make it. But I'd be happy to pass her information along to you, Diane, if you guys want to ponder that, because like I said, she negotiates with the charter companies, and the price of our boat in Croatia, I'm thinking, Heidi, it's not seeming like it's very much, is it?
I think it's
You're
around.
picking it up from Split, right?
Maybe it's like $1,000 per person for the week or something like that.
I think it's $1,000 a cabin.
Oh, okay.
$1,000 a cabin. Yeah.
So that's Croatia in September?
Yeah. Yeah, it was supposed to be last September, but the charter company very kindly just pushed us out a year.
Good. Do they have any catamarans?
Well, we're all on catamarans.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'll send you Liz's info.
Please do.
Yeah.
Where are you guys chartering out of?
We're chartering out of Zadar.
Okay.
Do you have any intentions of going to Dubrovnik, or can you even go into Montenegro at that point with your charter?
I haven't done that research.
Okay, okay.
Montenegro's
I was
quite a
just
ways
last year.
away.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a hike.
Yeah, we're up
Well,
on the
it's a
north
hike,
end. I
but-
think that's quite a way south.
Yeah.
We went into Montenegro,
I'm
but we
always just
had
used
to
to
do it
taking
by
those
bus because it was
destinations.
far.
Yeah. Mhm. That's true. About going all the way back too. But anyways, yeah, there was a great part of Montenegro. Dubrovnik was beautiful too, and same with Split.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sounds fun. That's a great time of year to go there too.
Yeah, we're kind of
looking forward to seeing all your photos.
All right. Well, thanks, Diane, for letting us relive this trip and getting to see our buddies. Bye, Kelly. Bye, Val. Bye, Heidi and Kirk.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, thank you for presenting.
And Wendy.
Yep. Hey, Linnea.
Hi.
Bye, Wendy. All right. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm going to stop recording now, and those who want to